As Dr. Sean Murphy sleeps the night away on a blanket on the floor, an alarm wakes him up and he does various exercises, his life and even brush his teeth. He gets on the elevator and when the other patron asks where he is going, he says to the San Jose St. Bonaventure Hospital, but the man tells him he meant which floor. He proudly reveals he is taking the bus from the ground floor. Dr. Jared Kalu and Dr. Claire Brown are interns working with Dr. Neil Melendez. When the patient asks if he will ever walk again, Dr. Sean Murphy says there is no chance he will walk, but then is told he wasn't talking about walking. Sean says he will not be impotent either. Melendez chastises him for being late, but he says it was the bus that was late, and fails to convince Sean that he was wrong. They are interrupted by an emergency consult in the ER. They look at the woman's CT scan and Sean says it's very big. As the others review what it could possibly be, Sean figures it out in his mind and says it's a malignant tumor. She asks if it's killing her and he quickly says yes, as Claire says not necessarily, and they are speculating right now. Outside of the room, Jared tells Sean he scared her and there was no need to be so blunt. Sean asks them why, since it is terminal if not treated soon, and isn't that scary? Jared is excited that they are finally going to dissect a real tumor and says it's okay since this manner outside the door is different than bedside manner. Sean says it is exciting because they will be saving a life and learning too. Jared is disappointed and Melendez chooses Claire to be his second. Melendez tells Sean he can do everything that his surgeons hate doing and he will handle it for them. Sean does his work a little too thoroughly and won't discharge patients without checking them over himself, refusing to let a patient go who came in with an ear infection, ordering an MRI and other tests. Dr. Aaron Glassman sees Sean sitting with a patient and when he asks what he is doing, Sean says he is waiting for her to fart and chose that word to make it more casual. Aaron is upset that Melendez feels this is the most useful thing he could be doing but doesn't say anything else other than welcoming him to surgical residency. Brown explains the procedure to their patient, but she asks if the surgery can be held off for a few weeks because her son is getting married in a couple weeks. Claire says recovery is fairly easy and she could be okay in a few weeks. Claire tells her she isn't going to die and she will be at the wedding, looking beautiful. Jared gives Claire problems for making promises like that. He doesn't understand how she can be so caring for patients but he can't get her to care for him. Dr. Marcus Andrews rushes into Melendez's office, pulls up an MRI screen and asks why the scan was done. He has no idea about it, but since someone on his team ordered it, it is his fault. Andrews says it is his job to know these things, so Melendez then asks him, since he works for him, isn't this all his fault? Dr. Murphy is checking a young patient, whose parents are wondering how much this is going to cost them since she only has a belly ache. Melendez comes in and speaks with Sean in the hallway. He lectures Sean on running unnecessary tests and when the nurse smiles, he lectures her but tells her that she is now Sean's boss and he needs to listen to her. During break, Aaron sits with Melendez, talking about Sean is there to be a surgeon and not a glorified orderly. He reminds Melendez that Sean earned every right to be there and had to get people like Melendez and their prejudices, and Aaron encourages him to teach him. Melendez says he will teach them both, at the same time that he doesn't belong there. Aaron says this is his hospital but Melendez says it's his team and he can't tell him how to run that team. She is paged to the OR and begin the surgery on the mother who has the Sean continues to try to do tests on patients but the nurse keeps stopping him. Every patient he sees, he is not allowed to do any tests and says he is sending a patient home, but when the patient asks if he is okay, Sean pauses and then tells him according to all hospital rules and guidelines, technically yes. During surgery, Melendez is struggling with getting to the tumor as it's so massive and cannot find her aorta. Sean is in a room, looking over his tests from the little girl with the bickering parents. The nurse is surprised since she thought they sent her home 4 hours ago. Instead of allowing him to scrub in, Melendez tells Sean to get to the lab and move along the biopsy results. He is told to go back and wait his turn for the results. Sean remembers when him and his brother, attempted to scam money from a stranger, and when the man called them a moron, if she doesn't give him the results right now, he will throw a rock through her window. She tells him that isn't necessary. Jessica Preston comes to see Dr. Neil, autistic doctor. She forces him to acknowledge that he just doesn't want one working for him. He is upset that she is accusing him of prejudice. She sits down and says they need to make this person. She asks him if it bothers him that it looks like he is on the wrong team. Sean returns to the room with the results. Jared says it sucks and Claire says she will wake her up, let her know she has 3 months to live and then palliative care, but Sean begins to visualize everything, saying surgery isn't impossible but just difficult. They can remove her healthy left kidney, which is in the way of removing the tumor. He says it's quite possible that she will die anyways, but rushes off saying he has A.W.O.L to Lance. Claire says it's brilliant but a terrible idea. Melendez feels the idea is insane, but Jared tells Claire that it's all about her telling the woman she will survive and be at her son's wedding. Melendez says she is compromised and can't stay objective now. Melendez says they are doing the surgery and Jared will now be his number 2. During the procedure, Claire is commenting about them clamping the life out of a perfectly good kidney and Melendez isn't pleased with her. Dr. Sean Murphy walks with Dr. Aaron Glassman, who introduces him to Trevor, the patient he sent home. Trevor had come to see the president of the hospital after he believed Sean sent him home, even though he believed he was sick. Both men want an explanation. Aaron says he reviewed Trevor's chart and with all certainty he can say he is in peak health. Trevor leaves as Aaron teaches him how to gauge people's reactions. Sean brings down the little girl's blood work, asking Carly to run them. She says those are a lot of tests and he could get into trouble. Melendez removes the kidney, and they are able to see the tumor as Dr. Murphy gets the blood work back and Carly says everything looks to be in normal range. He says normal should be lower for her. He figures out what she has and rushes off, saying thank you. Sean takes a taxi to the parents' house but panics when he reaches the door and is afraid to knock, remembering as a little boy how he couldn't knock. He begins to pound on the door. When the father answers he begins to blubber out medical terms that he thinks his daughter has. When the father says for him to call in the morning, he says she may not be alive in the morning. He slams the door saying he will be calling his boss in the morning. Sean knocks again, asking if he was sarcastic, and then reveals he is weird and will continue knocking until he knows she is okay. They cannot wake her and there is vomit all over her bed. Sean goes with the parents in the car back to the hospital. Sean remembers running down the street and Aaron finding him and revealing his brother is in terrible condition. Sean begins chest compressions and begs the father to hurry to the hospital. Once at the hospital, Sean continues to ride the gurney and give her compressions, and she's needing an ultrasound. Jared takes the praise for Sean's idea about he cannot make these kinds of calls on his own. Sean says a part of her bowel is shutting down and killing her, and since it is after midnight, it is tomorrow and she is no longer his boss. Sean calls and prepares an OR for surgery. In the operating room, Sean calls for her scalpel, but before he can cut her, Dr. Melendez comes in and says he is taking over. Sean asks about his other patient and he says Jared had an excellent idea and she will be all right. Melendez says this surgery is basic and he can go home and get some sleep, but Dr. Andrews orders him to let him stay, and says he will treat him like any other resident. Melendez says he is back on suction and congratulates him when Andrews leaves. Claire refuses to go for a drink with Jared. He suggests she could learn something from him and she asks like what? Stealing someone else's credit and make your than Sean's idea if it succeeds. Sean. He tells him he is wrong about Sean and he will handle anything he throws at him. Andrews doesn't care because as he succeeds he is the guy who just backed him, and if he fails, Andrews becomes president. Patient wakes up, learning there were complications and she doesn't care how she did it. They saved her and that is all that matters. Claire says she is going to be a beautiful mother of the groom. Aaron finds Sean watching the little girl and her parents because those who get the credit don't have to do scout work. He walks in and her parents hug him, very thankful. Sean returns home and crawls on his mattress in the middle of the floor of his place and sleeps. Make sure to like and subscribe the video and turn on notification so you never miss videos like this. Thanks for watching.